Larry Elder apparently appeared in the Breakfast Club this recent week. Well, I'm a fan of Larry Elder. He's a encyclopedia when it comes to statistics around systematic issues and racial issues. But let's get right into it.
And the answer is I bring a lot of issues to the table that I feel our side is not talking enough about, if at all. For example, the number one social problem in America by far is the epidemic not of COVID, but of fatherlessness. 70% of black kids today enter the world without a father in the home, married to the mother, up from 25% back in 1965. Now, 25% of white kids enter the world today without a father in the home, married to the mother. And the stats are clear. Even Barack Obama once cited them. If you're raised without a dad, you're 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail. What's happening?
Like I told y'all, man, he's an encyclopedia when it comes to these statistics. And with these all being known, I don't understand why anybody would want to be a single mother. I don't understand why that's such an epidemic in the black community, in the community alone. I don't understand why this is something that people strive to be. Why would you sit down with anybody that you know is not going to secure a better future for you and your offspring? Let us carry on.
Happened. In the mid 60s, with I think the best of intentions, a Democrat named Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. And since then, we have incentivized women to marry the government and incentivized men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. When I say this to people, the pushback I get is, well, there are lots of things that are going on, systemic racism, poverty. Here's the problem. If you look at a young black male aged 10 to 43, that's young to me because I'm 71 years old. A young black man in that demo is 13 times more likely to be murdered than a young white man, same demo. Young black man, real young, 19 and under, the number one cause of preventable death is homicide, almost always at the hands of another young black male. Same demo for whites, the number one cause of preventable death is unintentional deaths. That includes drug overdoses, automobile accidents, drownings. It's not until they get to number four that death is the cause. In America, 60% of the shootings, the robberies, and the homicides are committed by black people, often against other black people.
And this is actually kind of outrageous, realizing how much of a minority that black people are within the community and what, compared to the proportion of violent crime we're responsible for. I mean, I'm not saying, no, I am saying that actually. Let us carry on.
Of the homicides in this country, half of them are black victims, almost all killed by other blacks. How do you explain that if it isn't for the absence of fathers? Are you prepared to say black people are just genetically inclined to commit more crime? I doubt it. And the go-to reaction often is poverty and systemic racism. Here's the problem. 1940, when there was blatant racism, this is before Brown versus Board of Education, before the Civil Rights Act of 64, KKK was still alive and well. 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Now it's about 14%. You can't blame it on poverty. You can't blame it on racism. It is the breakdown of the nuclear intact family, and neither side is talking about it. The left doesn't talk about it because they caused it with the welfare state.
Man, this brother is already cooking like goddamn.
And our side does not talk about it because if you're white, you'll be accused of dissing single moms who are heroically raising these kids, or you'll be accused of being a racist, or if you're black, you'll be accused, as I was by the LA Times, of being the black face of white supremacy.
And speaking on these issues isn't necessarily a diss on single mothers that are doing what they can, but nonetheless, it's something that we have to speak on because it's affecting the society in such a dramatic way. I mean, if the majority of degeneracy comes from single motherhood homes, then shouldn't that be something that we discuss? Shouldn't that be something that we try to change, or should we keep patting single mothers on the back for doing their best?
Nobody's talking about that. I am.
What are the reasons, if your statistics are right, what are the reasons that you think fathers aren't in the home?
And look at Charlamagne talking about if your statistics are right. Like this brother is a straight coon, man. I never liked Charlamagne particularly. Let us carry on.
As I said, it's because in the mid 60s, Lyndon Johnson launched what he called the War on Poverty. And Charlamagne, literally, they sent social workers door to door in the inner city. I remember this, advising women of the availability of welfare provided there was no man in the house. It created an economic incentive for women to marry the government. Same thing with whites. In 1965, 8% of...
And this is what a lot of single mothers don't understand, that yes, you're going to get benefits from the government, but that therefore becomes the man of the household. And they're not going to necessarily lead your child into the direction that you would want them to be in. That doesn't, you cannot replace a father by implementing a system that wasn't even initially there to benefit you. Let us carry on.
Whites entered the world without a father in the home, married to the mother. Now it's about 25%, also up threefold. Look at census data, 1910, 1920, 1930, in places like Milwaukee, Chicago, Philadelphia. A young black kid was slightly more likely to be brought into a world with a father in the home, married to the mother, than a young white kid. We have incentivized this kind of bad behavior, and it's had a disproportionately bad effect on the black community.
And this shows you that the majority of the black community is subject to following what's going on, basically what I would like to call cultural appropriation. Basically, black people like to follow what's going on within the culture, what they prefer to be or what they perceive to be cultural norms, and that's not always going to benefit them.
Let me ask you a question: what do white people do wrong?
And here goes Charlamagne talking about what do white people do wrong. We're not talking about white people. We can sit here and discuss what white people do wrong left and right, but that's not going to help us. It's not like white people are going to change what they're doing when they're benefiting from whatever the fuck that they're doing. Like, what are you talking about, man?
What do you mean? What do white people do? I'm not worried about white people. I'm worried about what's going on with us.
But if there's systemic racism in this country, which we know it is.
No, I don't say there is. You say there is. I don't believe that.
Oh, you don't believe there's?
No, there used to be, obviously. Tell me what you think the number one systemic example of systemic racism is in America.
Oh man, there's so many.
Just give me the most important one you think.
At the top of mind, I'll probably say maybe mass incarceration. Maybe.
Really? During the Great Depression, when 50% of black adults were unemployed, you didn't have this kind of mass incarceration. It's the breakdown of the family. There's a direct.
I'm not going to. I agree with the family part. I'm a black man who is a father to his children.
When it comes to mass incarceration, I mean, black people are disproportionately given longer sentences for the same crimes, and oftentimes get caught up more for their crimes. But if you're not committing a crime in the first place, although there are a plethora of people in the system that are innocent, but if you're not doing a crime in the first place, then you don't have to worry about the repercussions of it. Black people are undisputedly responsible for the majority of the crime in the United States. Don't shoot me. I'm just a messenger.
Happily married black man to a black woman, so I'm never going to argue with that part. But I just feel like everything is black with you. Black is wrong. Black people do this, and black people.
See, welcome back, bro. Reason the problems can't be solved is because women can't be criticized in society. You can't even create female characters in movies that have any flaws. It's literally, and I completely agree. Like it doesn't matter where the criticism is coming from, whether it's from an African American male or white male. They'll still try to find a way to demonize the messenger. And the point of the conversation is not to attack black women or single mothers or any of that nature. It's just to have a conversation about things that we can fix. But if a white guy comes and says something across about it, he's now racist bigot. If a black guy says something, now he's the black face of white supremacy and he hates his own people. He doesn't love his women and he's full of self-hatred, right? So this is why these conversations are very, very rarely had. But let us carry on.
People do that. And when I asked you what white people do wrong, you said you're not worried about white people at all.
I'm talking about the damage, disproportionate damage going on in the black community. For example, look at these smash and grabs that are taking place in Los Angeles, where I live. There's a suburb called Glendale, where at a mall recently, a mob of 30 to 40 people, they had masks on, but one guy got popped. He was black. I think most of those who were doing this were black. And in recent years and times, there have been a number of these in places like Chicago, places like New York.
Sorry, man.
If I were involved in something like that,
stop calling me, man.
Charlamagne, I grew up with a dad, just as you're raising your own children. I would have been more afraid of my father than I would about the cops catching me. Right. These kids are afraid of neither. They don't have a father in the home. Cops are demoralized. They're pulling back. Their manpower is short. And as a result, you tell a bad guy you're less likely to be caught, convicted, incarcerated, crime goes up. They may be criminals, but they're not stupid. When you say, what do white people do? I mean, this is a country that has struggled mightily to get over its historic racism. There was a civil war. There was a big civil rights movement. This is the only majority white country that's ever elected a black president, let alone reelected a black president. The three biggest cities in America are New York, Chicago, LA. They all have black mayors, even though no city has a majority of black population. The president of Harvard is a black female. Martin Luther King in 1966, Charlamagne, gave an interview to the BBC. This is 2 years after the Civil Rights Act of 64 got passed. And he said, I'm amazed at how many positive changes there have been in America in the last 2 years. Why, if things keep going like this, we could have a black president in about 40 years' time. Do the math. Right on cue, Barack Obama elected 2008. He didn't say there'll be a black female president of Harvard, and there has been. He didn't say they're going to be black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, and there have been several. He didn't say the percentage.
Okay, I'm going to go skip ahead and get to, oh, matter of fact, I barely even have to. She's right about here. Because Charlamagne has very little insight to give, and DJ Envy knows his place, so he's not going to speak in.
Okay. Mr. Elder, quick question. Let's just remove the word racism, since that seems to be a word that triggers, a conversation down the water hole. Let's just focus on the word system. Okay. You mentioned that the system was the one that discouraged. And again, we have no problem with agreeing that the family, the black family, should certainly has some room for some improvement. But let's just focus on system.
Room for improvement?
System. Well, we're not going to go down that water. We're not going to go down that water hole. Let's get to the question. So the question is, you
see, it's a weird. Never mind. Let's carry on. Let me let her speak first.
Said that the system encouraged black women to be single mothers, correct?
I said the welfare state. Yes.
The welfare, the system. So who's in charge of the system? Who was in charge of the system?
Well, it was Democrats that passed it.
And who were Democrats? Were they black or white at that time?
Well, at the time, majority of black people were Democrats, as the majority of black people are Democrats now.
Not the voters. I'm talking about the system. Remember, the main idea is the word system.
See, she can sit here and say who's not the system, not the voters. I mean, we're talking about the system, not the voters. But the system is a reflection of the voters. I mean, who we have to vote for these people into office, correct? The Democratic Party is mostly, or most African Americans or black people or whatever you want to call the minorities, are a part of the democratic system. So if you want to blame the democratic system, you have to as well blame the voters, because they're the ones that put these people in position to make these decisions. They're supposed to represent the people, correct? She's trying to make it as if, okay, well, the democratic representatives were white, so it's white people's fault, and the system is a white people thing, this, that, and the third, as if black people didn't vote for Democrats to be in the system during the time this took place. Let us carry on.
Who was in charge of the system at the time? The Democrats at the time, the system. I'm just going to Charlamagne's point about white or black. Was it white Democrats in charge of the system or black Democrats in charge of the system?
Well, if you're prepared to say that Lyndon Johnson did this viciously with an intent to destroy the black family, I disagree. He did it with the best of intentions. And if you look at the New York Times, which is left wing, the Washington Post, which is left wing, they cheered all of this.
Right. And what I'm asking, was it white people? So I'm going to ask again in case my mic's not coming through clearly. Was it white people in charge of the system or black people in charge of that system that helped?
Who put these people in charge of the system? Who voted for these people to get implemented into the system? We can't skip past the fact that the people that are in charge are representatives of the people that voted them into office, right? She's
down the black family. It's a simple yes, just a simple question.
And she's so combative, like off rip, like this energy. I just can't, like, me personally, no.
Or black.
Well, you didn't have to go on welfare unless you voluntarily chose to go on welfare. The inducement was put there by Democrats, by the left.
Correct. Okay. Democrats,
well, most black people were Democrats, and they voted for these white people.
Not voters. I said who's in charge of the system.
Well, I want you guys to play that again. I want you guys to listen to this 1 second. Listen to what he just said.
Black people were Democrats by the left.
Correct. Okay. Democrats,
most black people were Democrats, and they voted for these white people.
Not voters. I said
most black people were Democrats, and they voted for these white people to be into office. So therefore, we have to bear some responsibility here. Correct? She's trying to act as if it's not other responsibilities on the representatives that we put into office.
And who's in charge of the system?
Well, who put them in charge?
Was Lyndon Johnson white or black?
Who put them in charge?
Maybe that'll help you.
Fine. Lyndon Johnson was white.
Thank you.
Okay. But if your argument is that the reason he did it is because of racism, then I disagree. He did it because of
That's not my argument. I just asked you a simple question. Was he white or black? Charlamagne?
And Mr. Elder, you said.
And what the fuck is your argument? I have man, what the fuck is she talking about? What is your argument then?
You talked about the smash and grabs, right? And I find that interesting because, when you see the mass shootings that happen, majority of those people are white males. What do you think about that?
Actually, if you look at the percentage of whites in America, which is 60%, percentage of mass shooters is under that. The percentage of people that commit hate crime is under that. The percentage of people who are serial killers is under that. Black people are 13% of the population. We commit a greater percentage compared to that of mass shootings.
We talked about the smash and grabs, though. So I was saying, since you're using that as an example, I'm saying, well, what about the mass shooters that are usually white males?
One more time. They are usually white males because 60% of the country is white. However, they underrepresent.
Hold on, I want y'all to listen here. listen to what he's about to say here. I got to play it back.
White males, because 60% of the country is white. However, they underrepresent in terms of the number of mass shootings. About 50% or so of the mass shootings in this country are committed by white people, even though white people are 60% of the population. They underrepresent. We overrepresent when it comes to hate crime, when it comes to mass shootings, when it comes to serial killings, when it comes to robberies, when it comes to virtually every category of violent crime. We overrepresent.
So what do white people do wrong? I'm gonna keep asking you that because I want.
Well, Charlamagne keeps talking about what the fuck do white people do wrong. Shut up, man. That's not the conversation that we're having. And we can sit here and talk all day about what. Turn that light off. We can sit here and talk about all day about what white people do wrong, but that's not going to get anywhere. We need to figure out what we can do for ourselves. We can sit here and discuss what the white man did here, what he did there. What the fuck is that going to do if it's benefiting their own? If it's benefiting them, at the end of the day, it's their own prerogative, right? I mean, it should be mind blowing that we're such a minority of the community, but we overrepresent in such a degenerate way. And I say that meaning we're responsible for a majority of the crime, right? The last time I checked, white people were like 13.6% of the population, or I might be wrong here. Maybe my statistics are old, but regardless, we shouldn't be the majority of the crime. Not saying that white people don't do anything, but based on white people are the majority and they underrepresent when it comes to their sharehold of violent crimes, correct? I mean, 9 times out of 10, if you're getting robbed by somebody, it's not going to be a white guy. If you're getting shot by somebody, it's probably not going to be a white guy. It might be, it has been sometimes. I'm not going to sit here and act like white people are incapable of violence, but we all know who you fear when you go out into these streets at night, and it's definitely not white people. Let's carry on.
Well, it seems to me, rather than deal with what's going on, the pathology that's going on in the inner city, you want me to talk about how bad white people are.
No, we can sit here and talk about how bad white people are and this, that, and the third, and it's not going to get anybody anywhere. Charlamagne he's one of those coons that calls real black leaders coons, but in reality, he's the coon.
I don't think there's a cause
which I don't even use that word on YouTube.
Which I don't think is a particularly productive thing to do.
Well, I think there's a cause and effect, but if we can't talk about the cause, which I believe is systemic racism and white supremacy, the FBI says.
Well, I just told you, if it's systemic racism, please explain to me how it was when America really had systemic racism in 1940. 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line. Again, this is during Jim Crow era. My father is from Athens, Georgia, grew up in Jim Crow. My mom is from Huntsville, Alabama, grew up in Jim Crow. 87% of blacks live below the poverty line. This is before Brown versus Board of Education. You did not find these kind of black on black crime.
Probably because we had no
choice. But they still were living below the poverty line, though, sir.
I'm sorry?
You're forgetting the fact that they were still living below the poverty line. You're picking and choosing, saying this was good, but this was bad.
Okay.
The bottom line, they end between the poverty line. But let's move forward.
Can I just address that? In 1940, 87% of blacks lived.
No, you see how combative this woman is. Like, you're the one leading the conversation. Hold on, hold your tongue, wait your turn. Hold your peace. Carry on.
Under the poverty line. 1960, that number had fallen to 47%. That's a 40-point drop in 20 years. That's the greatest 20-year period of economic expansion for black people in the history of America. Again, well before Brown versus Board of Education, well before the KKK imploded, well before we had race-based preferences. Why? Because it was rare for a black kid to be raised in a family without a father in the home. A strong belief in Judeo-Christian values, a belief in patriotism, even as America wasn't applying these values to black people, obviously, and a belief in entrepreneurship. All those things are now under assault by organizations like Black Lives Matter. Charlamagne, Black Lives Matter had on their website an attack on the nuclear family. The founders are self-described Marxists.
Say it again, an attack on the nuclear family.
Marxists, trained Marxists. Marx wanted to dethrone God, was an atheist, and Marx did not believe in capitalism, let alone entrepreneurship. All the things that made black people still survive in virulent racism are now under attack by organizations like Black Lives Matter.
All of those things have always been under attack by white supremacy. You can go back to things like whether it's the Tulsa race massacres, like every time black people do create these systems that are our systems and we are the entrepreneurs, it seems like white supremacy finds a way to destroy it.
Every time, look, the Tulsa massacre, within about 5 years, that whole area was.
And here goes Charlamagne talking about every single time we try to build something, it seems like white supremacy is who tries to destroy it, when oftentimes we're our own worst enemies. I'm not going to act like it doesn't play its role, but it's foundationally us who end up messing these type of things up.
Rebuilt. It was not even called the Black Wall Street until after it was rebuilt. It was rebuilt, by the way, by black people without one dime of government money.
Yeah, but who destroyed it to begin with?
It was racists who destroyed it. No question about it. We've had race riots. So if Japanese.
So you do agree that there's racism? I'm just so confused.
You know, I never.
And just look at DJ Envy. He knows all of this shit is completely out of his wheelhouse. I respect him for not trying to talk about shit that he doesn't know. He doesn't understand. We know who DJ Envy is, and he's no Larry Elder. You hear me?
Even came close to saying I never came close to saying there was no racism.
You just saying you don't think it's systemic racism.
Not anymore. Obviously, there was. We had something called slavery. We had something called Jim Crow.
That destroyed black. Hold on, sir. That was system that destroyed. That was the system that destroyed Black Wall Street. It's the same system right now that's not even wanting to pay those same living descendants, because I know your position on reparations, but those same living descendants of Black Wall Street.
Okay.
And then you move, and then you go on to say that
See, I'm guessing here that Larry Elder's position on reparations would probably be that it would essentially be non-effective, and he's probably correct, because giving people money won't do anything when they don't know what to do with the money. You see what happened with the stimulus checks. People got their money, they spent it, and the rich got richer. There's no solutions but that are gonna come from just giving away money. It has to come with education. You can't give money with no education, because at the end of the day, it's gonna end up right back into the pockets of the people that gave it out.
System, the quote unquote system, is also trying to destroy President Trump. So I'm just so confused on, do you believe that the system can destroy or not? You pick and choose, sir, and that's what's so confusing to me. You just said it wasn't racism. Now it is racism. When it was time to build it back, there was no racism.
I said it wasn't systemic racism. Let's talk about.
So what are you just hung up on the word system?
Can I just make this point, Charlamagne, please? Let's take Chinese Americans. Chinese Americans were the first ethnic group to be excluded with an immigration act in the late 1800s. They had riots against Chinese in LA, in San Francisco. There were laws that prevented Chinese Americans from participating in the laundry business. I'm in California. California, of course, rounded up Japanese Americans during World War II. There were laws that prevented Japanese Americans from owning farmland. The average Japanese American household has a higher per capita income than the average white household. The average Chinese American household has a higher per capita income than the average white household. How does that happen?
So was that the system that made that become the outcome, or was it due to the Chinese people and the other minorities doing what they had to do to put themselves above the system? This is why he keeps deflecting away from the point of, we can't sit here and talk about what white people have done wrong and what they should have done instead, or what could have been this, that, and the third, because that doesn't matter. That's their own prerogative. We have to make sure that our prerogative is towards success, is towards something developmental.
It happens because of a strong belief.
I'm kind of stuck for words today, man. What's wrong with me?
In family. It is rare for a Chinese American or a Japanese American kid to have a child outside of wedlock, and a strong belief in education and a strong belief in entrepreneurship. These are the kinds of qualities that make people successful.
You can't blame everything on having a fatherless family, right? Because
I didn't say blaming everything.
I know, but that's what you're saying. You're saying a strong community. But
no, you said that.
Man, DJ Envy, shut the fuck up.
That's what I just said. I didn't say that.
You talk about the Asian community. Asian community, it's easy for them to get loans for entrepreneurships. It's easy for them to get loans for houses. You look at our community. Okay. If you really want to talk about our community, right? You look at the schools in our community. Some of our schools are the worst, right?
And I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with the fact that where he said you can't necessarily blame the single mother households or fatherlessness for the outcomes that we've received, when majority of the degeneracy in our society and in the Black community, I can't even say the Black community, because the community is a group of people that share values, morals, and whatnot. But you can blame the majority of the degeneracy from not having a father within the household. I'm pretty sure he gave the statistics earlier in this video.
You agree with that? Yes or no?
Absolutely. Which is why one of the reasons I'm running for president is for school choice.
Also, would you say that it's in our community is systemic? It's also in our communities heavy food deserts. There's nothing but fast food places that are just killing and destroying that. Would you say that's true?
Systemic too.
Boy.
You say that's true. I'm just asking a question.
You said a number of things. I just addressed one of them about loans. Mm-hmm. In 1965, Barack Obama, who was in private practice, joined a bunch of other lawyers to file a class action lawsuit against Citicorp, which is headquartered here in New York. 186 Black people were applying for loans for mortgages and didn't get them. And they accused Citicorp of engaging in racism. Mm-hmm. Citicorp said, no, it's not racism. You have poor credit scores, and we want to make sure we get our money back. Obama joined a bunch of other lawyers, and they sued Citicorp in a class action lawsuit. And Citicorp said, okay, to hell with it. Gave them all loans. And they followed them all up. Daily Caller did a few years later. Almost all of them lost their homes. Several of them filed for bankruptcy. One of them even said, you know, when you don't qualify for a loan, maybe we shouldn't get a loan. Well, duh. It wasn't true that Black people were not getting loans. Plus, there are all sorts of Black-owned communities.
And that goes to back that giving away money isn't going to fix any systemic problems or any. It's not going to fix anything if the money doesn't come with education. If you don't know how to spend the money, invest the money, and build real wealth with the money, then it's not going to do anything but put you in a deeper hole than you were in prior to having the money.
Community banks around the country, and it turns out the turn down rate when you apply for a loan at a community bank was even higher because they had less capital and they couldn't afford to loan money to risky people. It is just not the case that the reason for the plight of the Black community is because people were not lending money to them. It's just not true.
That's not true. But hold on 1 second, Charlamagne. But see,
what's not true?
You're bringing back facts of 1965, right? Let's talk 2023, right?
I said 1995.
1995. We'll talk 2023, right? My son will be successful in real estate and successful in buying a house. You know why? Because his father owns his house. Because his father owns a house, right? But my father,
because of you and the drive, because of you and the drive you put into him,
did not own houses.
Because of you and the drive you put into him.
We're not going to have a conversation.
You're not even appreciating what you've done to your son.
I'm just asking you a question. I just let you speak. I'll let you talk.
Okay.
We have a conversation. When we talk about it, right? It's harder for our community to get loans, right? And not just because of poor credit scores. It's because of where the areas are. You talked about the Asian community. A lot of the Asian community have their own banks and they're able to process and get their own banks. There's not too many African-American branches that are able to give out money. So that's one. Then let's talk about getting grants for schools. They're not even giving grants for schools at the rate that they're giving grants for white people. And let's talk about when they talk about entrepreneurship. They are giving so much money to these white and Asian kids and Asian people doing it, and a 1,000 times less than our community. Will you agree to any of that?
No, I don't. I don't agree with virtually any of what you just now said. The turn down rate for a white applicant for a mortgage is higher than the turn down rate for a Japanese or Chinese applicant for a mortgage. Now, are you telling me that banks are discriminating against white and in favor of Asian Americans? It's because their credit scores are better. They often live below their means. They save more.
This nigga is cooking.
Even when they're making the same amount of money than Black people do. If you have poor credit score, you're not going to get a loan. Period. End of statement. Even the head of Urban League, a Black man once said that if you have poor credit score, you're not going to get a loan. End of statement.
Sir,
yes.
Let's just when you were talking about crime, you weren't prepared to talk about disproportion. You talked about how it was more Black people that was doing it, and then you talked about how we're the smaller, of the population. The same applies also to the loans. It's more white people than it is Black people. You seem to pick and choose.
I'm talking about the rate. Talking about the rate.
Whatever it is, the bottom line is it's more white people than it is Black people. And so if more Black people are not getting loans disproportionately, it seems you only want to apply the disproportion to the conversation when it benefits your talking point.
I'm not sure you understood.
Which is why they said.
I'm not sure you understood. I'm not sure you understood my point. That's why I mentioned in 1995.
She didn't understand the point.
When 186 Black people who were not getting loans filed a class action lawsuit claiming that they were denied the loan because of racism. Citicorp said, okay, here are your loans. The reason I wasn't giving you the loans is because we're afraid you weren't going to be able to pay them back.
I'm not talking about
Fast forward, they weren't able to pay them back, which proves the Citicorp point.
I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about
I know you're not. Because inconvenient.
I'm talking about your response to Envy when you said more white people get approved for loans.
Since you like numbers, Washington Post said Black America.
That's not even what he said. He said more Asian. He said Asian people or Chinese. I don't remember specifically which one he said, but he said they get approved more than white people. Does that mean that the system is working against white people in favor of Asians?
Americans have the highest denial rates for purchase and refinance loans, according to Home Mortgage Disclosures Act.
Because of their credit score.
And all credit scores are the same. 15% of Hispanic loan applicants were denied, compared with about 11% of white and 10% of Asian applicants with same credit scores. And that's Washington Post, since you love numbers so much, and I know you do love numbers. That's coming from the Washington Post. That's 2023, not 1995.
I can show you a study that says the opposite.
Let me ask you a question. Mr. Elder, Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and I'm pretty sure everybody who just caught a RICO with him in Georgia, they all had fathers. They still ended up in jail. How did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody said.
See, and Charlamagne's trying to use anecdotes to prove the rule. Like, anecdotes don't prove the rule. You can't point out one specific situation and say, well, they had fathers, but they still ended up here, or they still ended up in this situation. So can that statement be accurate? Yes, the statement can still be accurate. Just because it didn't apply to a specific group of people or persons does not mean that it's not that it disproves the rule. Like, what type of low IQ question was that?
Nobody said if you have a father, you won't go to jail. Nobody said if you didn't have a father, you were going to jail. My father never.
But guess what you did say, Mr. Elder? I'm sorry, respectfully.
Can he speak? Like, God damn, I'm getting tired of this Bob popping up on the screen.
May I answer his question?
Guess what you did say.
May I answer his question?
Let him finish his statement, Ted.
Okay.
My father never knew his biological father. He got thrown out of the house when he was 13 years old, 8th grade dropout, Jim Crow South, Athens, Georgia.
Like, I don't understand why he has to sit here and actually explain that. Just because statistics tell you that you're more likely to end up in a specific situation doesn't mean you're guaranteed to end up in that specific situation. There's statistics. It's just it's just speaking in terms of probability. Like, this isn't like, why does he have to explain this? Yes, if you grew up with your father, you're more likely to live a less degenerate life than a person that grew up without their father. Does that mean someone that grew up without their father cannot live a better and more wholesome life than someone who did? No, they can still do that. It's just the probability is going to show that more people on average are going to be degenerate or live a degenerate life when they grow up without a father in the household or without a father in their life period.
Fast forward, my dad cleaned toilets, 2 full-time jobs cleaning toilets when I was growing up, went to night school to get his GED, and then after that, he went to night school to learn how to operate a small restaurant. Age of 47, my dad saves his nickels and dimes from his job, starts a small restaurant near downtown LA. Fast forward, he retires in his 80s. He owned that restaurant. He owned property next door, plus the house that's still in our family. Not too shabby for somebody who did not know his biological father. It's not a death sentence. You still have choices. It's just much, much more difficult to raise a child on your own. Even Tupac Shakur said, I know for a fact, Tupac, excuse me. I know for a fact, had I had a father, I would have been more confident. I would have been more disciplined. End of quote.
Well, how did all those white men end up in jail when they still had fathers? Did Trump's in the...
So Charlamagne absolutely didn't hear shit that he just said. Let us carry on, man. This guy Charlamagne is and he's the smartest nigga on the Breakfast Club. So that shows you that they're all ranging from the minimal IQ.
Giuliani, I'm just asking the question. How did they end up in jail?
Because some people commit crimes.
No, sir.
Like, like, that was just the dumbest, most low IQ question to ask after the statement that he just gave. Obviously, just because they have father doesn't mean they're incapable of committing crime, of degeneracy, of being bad people, of having low morals. It doesn't mean that you're incapable of that. It just means that you're more probable to not be associated with that.
Stop. My apologies.
Like, does he understand how probability works? Like, it's not a guarantee here.
You earlier, I just couldn't stomach the answer that I knew you were going to say.
Couldn't stomach the answer.
Yeah, I couldn't stomach, because your actual answer to Trump being what was happening to him with the indictments, you actually said that the system was doing it. You said there was a 2-tier system. This is your words.
That's right.
It was a 2-tier system. So when it came to Trump, all of a sudden you now believe in this systematic thing that's happening to Trump. But then when it happens to black people,
it's not about race. It's not about race. I didn't
ask you that. I asked you, remember I made it easy for you and I took race out of it. Remember I said, I'm just talking about the system. I'm just talking about the system.
If you want to ask me whether I believe Donald Trump is being treated the same way as Joe Biden and is being treated the same way as Hillary Clinton, all these people are white. All these people are white. There's a double standard.
Well,
Mr. Elder, you didn't hear my question.
You said that
you didn't hear my question.
You said some people commit crimes. So you do believe that Trump, Giuliani, they committed a crime.
I don't know.
But you just said some people commit crimes.
I said some people committed a crime. I didn't say Donald Trump committed a crime. If you ask me specifically whether I believe Donald Trump committed a crime, I don't.
I don't. Specifically about those people and why they ended up in jail. They all got fathers.
Well, Donald Trump is not in jail.
Oh, he got indicted.
Yeah, he got indicted. That's a far cry from being in jail.
Why did he get indicted?
Well, he got arrested, is what I'm saying. He's going to get arrested.
He got indicted, in my opinion, because the DOJ has a double standard. They let Hillary pass, for example. She clearly violated the Espionage Act by having an unsecured server in her basement. She paid for the Steele dossier. She destroyed 30,000 emails that were under subpoena, and she got a wrist slap. And Donald Trump is now being indicted, I think, for the 4th time. It's unfair.
Right.
Black people are telling y'all how corrupt the FBI is.
Let's see. There's a meme about black people having difficulty understanding per capita statistics. This is proving it. Exactly. Like, why is this so hard for them to conceptualize and understand that just because the statistics say you're more probable, you have a higher probability of this, doesn't guarantee that that'll be the outcome. Like, it's not rocket science, man.
For a long time.
And the FBI has been corrupt. There was COINTEL, the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover also wiretapped MLK under Robert Kennedy, a Democrat Attorney General, Malcolm X, lots of things. Right. And I find it interesting how the same people who criticize the FBI historically are now defending the FBI because they're going after Donald Trump.
Oh, we're not defending FBI.
I didn't say you were. I said some of the same people.
We're just looking and saying, damn, finally.
What's your thoughts with Florida? And you see that they're trying to take our history out of these history books and not trying to teach our history. What's your thoughts?
I find it interesting that the Democrats are the ones complaining about Florida. This is the party of slavery, party of Jim Crow, the party of the KKK, the party of the Southern Manifesto, the party of Dred Scott, the party that I said earlier destroyed the nuclear intact family, and the party that is opposing school choice. And now they want to lecture Florida on making sure the proper history of slavery is taught. I don't know anybody who's defending slavery. Anybody. Not Ron DeSantis. He's not defending.
People benefited from slavery.
Actually, you're talking about one line. You're talking about one line in about 127 pages of the study, and it is a line that was repeated almost verbatim in the associated in the advanced placement African American course that the DeSantis administration refused to use because of all the sexual stuff that was in it. It's basically the same thing that was in the advanced placement African American courses, and now because it's in that, all of a sudden the governor is accused of somehow defending slavery. He's not doing anything of the sort.
What did you think about that?
Well, sir, you were actually one that defended slavery. In your comments, you said that, like it or not, slavery was legal in response to reparations. So it's you that was defending slavery, correct?
Defending it and saying that it's illegal are two.
I was just about to say that defending it and saying it was legal are two completely different things. This woman is about to just irritate me the whole video.
Very different things. Slavery, unfortunately.
That was your response. That was your response into if reparations should happen. So your response to that was, like it or not, slavery was legal, and one would think that was a defense on those who were asking.
Well, you would think it was a defense, but it is not a defense. Unfortunately, slavery has been part and parcel of human history from the very beginning. Asians enslaved Asians, whites enslaved whites, blacks enslaved blacks, Native Americans enslaved Native Americans. This is a culture, the Western civilization, that had a revulsion against it. We had a civil war against it. And we ought to applaud ourselves for doing something about this. This is a flawed country. It's moving forward. It's becoming more perfect all the time. Today, if you are born and raised in America, if you finish high school, presumably one where you can read, write, and computer grade level, which is why I support school choice. Don't have a kid before you're 20, get married first, get a job, keep a job, don't quit it until you get another job, and avoid the criminal justice system. You will not be poor. And if you don't follow that formula, there's a good chance you will be.
You know, the first GOP debate is coming up, and you didn't qualify, and I saw you writing.
Well, you didn't say, I've not yet qualified. It's not until August 21.
Oh, okay. Well, I saw you writing the op-ed that the Republican National Committee has rigged the rules of the game by instituting a set of criteria that is so onerous. What is it? Onerous.
Onerous.
And
I mispronounced Tupac, so you mispronounced onerous. So we're even.
You are really petty, man.
And you said poorly designed that only establishment and billionaire candidates are guaranteed to be on stage. Explain to us why that system hurts people.
Well, I ran for governor of California. I got 3.5 million votes. It seemed to me that made me credible. The RNC is requiring us to have 1% or 40,000 individual donors. In 2020, the DNC required you to have 1% or a certain number of donors. For reasons that I don't quite understand, the RNC is requiring you to have both of them. One of the candidates in this race is a multimillionaire. He's offered a $20 gift certificate if you give $1. Another one is offering a free, air quotes, country western concert if you give $1. Another one is giving you a commission if you are a prospective donor to go out and get other prospective donors. It seems to me that corrupts the whole process. I'm doing it the old-fashioned way, Charlamagne. I'm asking people to support me and go to my website, larryelder.com, and give me at least $1. If I get $1 from 40,000 individuals, I will be up on that stage in Milwaukee on August 23. And when I get up there, game on, hold my beer.
So why is this system? Is this system holding you back?
Go ahead.
Would you say it's a system holding you back?
I would say it's unfair. It seems to me this early, the voters ought to decide this. I mean, in 2016, there were 17 or 18 Republican candidates. Now there's 13. Somehow, some way, our republic survived.
I'm also failing to realize that he's not advocating that there's not systematic adversities when it comes to certain things. He's just pointing out that most of the systematic issues are not necessarily racial.
And we could survive with 13 candidates. I don't know why they have all this rule to eliminate certain people at this point. But rather than
those systems can hold you back no matter how hard you work, right?
No, I'm going to say, but rather than whine about it, my goal is to get on as many shows as I can, like yours. Urge people to go to larryelder.com, give at least $1, even if you want somebody else Don't you think it's wise for us to talk about the epidemic of fatherlessness, the lie that America remains systemic racism, systemically racist, and the need for school choice? 13 public high schools in Baltimore, 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Are you kidding me? 53 public high schools in Chicago, 0% of the kids can do math at grade level. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party is opposed to school choice, while the party elites, whether it's Barack Obama or Gavin Newsom or Joe Biden, have their own kids in private school. It is wrong, and we need to talk about that.
Larry Elder, why would somebody from our community vote for you, or why should they vote for you? Why should a Black person vote for you?
Because I'm telling the truth, and the truth oftentimes is unpleasant. It's not pleasant for me to be called the black face of white supremacy, as the LA Times did. It's not pleasant for me to be accused of being anti-black, as Tavis Smiley once called me, because I don't support reparations. By the way, Barack Obama never supported reparations. Nobody called him anti-black. We need to talk about what's going on. What's going on is the breakdown of the family. And most of the things we complain about downstream, whether it's crime or whether it's bad schools.
See, and I was correct about his position when it comes to reparations. Giving out money to people isn't going to fix the problem. It's if they're not educated on how to spend the money. And the bigger problem is the breakdown of the nuclear family. I mean, nothing's like, for instance, giving out money is not going to do anything. There's nothing worse than a broke crackhead than a rich crackhead, because eventually he'll kill himself because he has the money to do so. Like, it's not rocket science.
The genesis is the breakdown of the nuclear intact family, and we don't talk enough about it.
Do you agree that our community is hit harder with a lot of things that you just said, whether it is racism, whether it is getting loans, whether it is getting entrepreneurship, whether it is education, whether it is all those things? You do understand that and agree with that, correct?
I do, but much of it is either self-inflicted or because of policies that we have supported, Democrats that we have supported. I wrote a book it's coming out in October. It's called As Goes California, My Mission to Rescue the Golden State and Save the Nation. It's about the one-party rule in California. California has supermajorities of Democrats in the Senate and in the House. And as a result, our schools are near the bottom. People are leaving California for the very first time. We have the highest state income tax in the country. The average price of a home in California costs 175% above the national average, all because of these left-wing policies that are hurting the very people, Black and brown people living in the inner city, that people on the left claim that they care about.
Do you think slavery was self-inflicted? Or do you think Jim Crow segregation was self-inflicted? Or do you think...
And now he's saying, man, Charlamagne is a buffoon. He's going to ask Larry Elder, do you think slavery was self-inflicted? What type of stupid ass question is that? Like, what is, Jesus Christ?
You know,
slavery was self-inflicted. Of course, it wasn't self-inflicted, but there are a lot of people have bloody hands in slavery. For example, slavery could not have existed had it not been for African chieftains who were selling.
I knew he was going to say that. So to an extent, it was self-inflicted, but at the same time, it wasn't.
Black slaves captured in battle or captured through raids and selling them to European and Arab slavers. It could not have existed without that. So everybody has dirty hands here. That's why reparations is such a fool.
And a lot of people don't understand that there was the majority of, I mean, not a majority, but there was a number of Black chiefs that sold their own over to the white man. So it's not like we didn't play a role in slavery. Not saying that slavery is our fault or this, that, and the third. I'm not going to take it that far, but we definitely had a role in it.
Foolish thing. If you're going to get reparations from the 5% or so of white people that have some sort of generational connection to slavery, and that's all there is, then you need to go back to Africa and get money from African countries that were involved in the slave trade and in the Arab slave trade. And by the way, the Arab slave
motherfuckers don't want to have that conversation. I do that. Let's carry on.
Trade was even worse than the European slave trade. 90% rate of attrition, often making men and women walk on barefoot across the Sahara, and the men were castrated. Only about
okay,
5.
So if they go after the money from the other countries, then would you agree that it would be okay to go after the money from America? Is that your problem with it?
Is she stupid? Does she not understand the picture he was trying to paint by giving that example? Is she? God damn, the Breakfast Club is just a whole bunch of low IQ individuals, isn't it? Like Larry Elder, you need to be on a completely different talk show, because what the fuck?
When are you going to stop with this? Everybody has a grievance. I'm answering your question. There's no end. There'll be no end.
Don't ask a question and then cut the man off. Let him answer your question.
This because slavery has been part of human history.
This broad just cannot shut up. Like, damn, can he get 3 words out with this broad not intervening? Jesus.
From the very beginning,
we'd be
getting money.
I've let you talk. Sir, I've let you talk. And every time I talk, you begin to...
Look at this harlot. You asked him a question and he began to answer your question. Now you're complaining about him talking when you're the one that interrupted him while he was answering your question. Somebody get this broad off the network, man. What, man?
Talking and you say, let you finish. So I asked you a very simple question. You said, if you're going to go after it in America, go after it in Africa. So if we all agree to go after it in Africa, will you then agree to go after it in America? It's just a simple question. Yes or no?
No, I won't, because it's a waste of time. We ought to be spending our time on education.
And how would we even be able to decipher who to go after to in Africa? Like, wouldn't there be lines that are crossed of people that were benefited from the situation and people that did not or were on the other end of the stick in the same tribes, in the same, there's no way that you could possibly figure out who owes what and who's supposed to pay it. Like, that's just an absurd question.
Okay, you told me that I cut you off.
And don't get me wrong. I used to be one of those people that used to think, okay, yes, reparations. That'll help our situations if we just get money for what the fuck our ancestors went through and this, that, and the third. But I didn't understand that money without knowledge is just you digging yourself a bigger hole. Why do you think majority of the people that win the lottery end up broker than they were prior to winning the lottery? I mean, it's just how it is.
Then I try to answer your question. You won't let me finish.
Go ahead, Larry.
Thank you. It's a waste of time. We ought to be talking about working hard, investing in ourselves. Right now, as we speak, there are Haitians in Haiti lining up for a lottery to come into this country. Why? Because it is the land of the free and the home of the brave. You can go from nothing to something faster in America than any other country in all of human history. We ought to be talking about that. Let me just, one more point. 1997, Time Magazine and CNN hooked up together to do a poll on what Black teenagers and white teenagers felt about racism. And both of them were asked, is racism a major problem in America? Both of them said yes. But then Time and CNN asked this question of the Black teenagers. Is racism a big problem, a small problem, or no problem in your own daily life? This is 1997. 89% of them said small problem or no problem in my own daily life. In fact, twice as many Blacks said failure to take advantage of available opportunities is a bigger problem than racism.
That was 1997.
1997. Look it up.
That is a fact. Failure to take advantage of available opportunities is a bigger problem than racism. I mean, racism is apparent. Racism isn't going anywhere, but the things that affect you on a day-to-day basis probably have more to do with the opportunities that you passed up, that you failed to take advantage of, than the way somebody else may perceive you.
2023, though.
You think America's more racist now after the election and re-election of Barack Obama than it was in 1997?
Yes, because of the election of MAGA, Donald Trump, 100%. Yes.
Really?
Absolutely.
Well, how is it?
Charlamagne is just a buffoon.
How is it, Charlamagne, that Donald Trump got 8% of the Black vote in 2016? He got 12% in 2020, a 50% increase. He got 20% of the Black male vote in 2020. If MAGA is racist, how do you explain that Donald Trump substantially increased the percentage of Black votes the Republican Party got?
Sometimes people make.
So why are you running against Trump then, Mr. Elder?
Yeah,
I'm not running against him. I'm running against Biden Harris. Any one of the Republican nominees we have would be better than what we have right now. I'm not running against him. I'm running to put forth the issues I just now mentioned that I've been talking about for the last few minutes.
I want to ask you about that. After 4 indictments,
we got Larry Elder in office. Man, I'd be 1 to see what would result from that, because this seems like a very straightforward guy. It seems like a guy that's not having it, and I wonder if he'd be able to get his prerogatives pushed in office.
91 criminal charges. Don't you think it would behoove the Republican Party to move on from Donald Trump?
I think that the voters in the primary will make that decision.
What do you think, though?
I have no problem with I thought Donald Trump did an extraordinary job as president, especially for Black people. Best economy ever. He did something about the borders. The people that are most hurt because of porous borders are Black people living in the inner city, because most of the illegal aliens have little or no education. They end up living in the inner city. They compete against Black people with high school or less for jobs. There are about 1 million fewer Black people working than who would otherwise be working if it weren't for illegal alien labor. And illegal alien labor, according to a study done by the Civil Rights Commission, puts downward pressure to the tune of almost $2,000 per year on the salaries of Black people living in the inner city. And Donald Trump gave us the most secure border we ever had. He also supported school choice. He also did the First Step Act, which allowed about 5,000 mostly Black men with long criminal sentences, nonviolent, to have their sentences reduced an average of 70 months per. He pardoned Jack Johnson, the first Black heavyweight champion. Even Barack Obama didn't do that. Yeah, he did an extraordinary job for Black people.
I think you're innocent until proven guilty, but I feel like President Biden had 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges. President Obama had 4 indictments, 91 criminal charges. Y'all would be telling them that they need to step aside and they shouldn't be running for president.
Well, I wouldn't vote for Barack Obama or for Joe Biden in any case, no matter whether he had indictments or no indictments. I don't vote for tax spend, regulate liberals.
You're a conservative, right? Obviously.
No question.
What initially made you gravitate towards being a conservative?
I think it was my father. My father was a lifelong Republican, and my father always told my brothers and me the following: Democrats want to give you something for nothing. When you try and get something for nothing, you almost always end up getting nothing for something. And my dad, I told you about his background.
Hold on. I got to play it back. Y'all not hearing him.
I think for nothing, your brothers and me the following: Democrats want to give you something for nothing. When you try and get something for nothing, you almost always end up getting nothing for something. And my dad, I told you about his background. He told my brothers and me that hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. You cannot control the outcome, Larry, but you are 100% in control of the effort. Before you moan or groan about what somebody did or said to you, go to the nearest mirror, look at it, and ask yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? And finally, Charlamagne, my dad told my brothers and me this: no matter how hard you work, how good you are, sooner or later, bad stuff is going to happen to you. How you deal with those bad things will tell your mother and me if we raised a man. I wrote a book about my father's life.
You're not hearing him, man. I got to play it back one more time.
Go to the nearest mirror, look at it, and ask yourself, what could I have done to change the outcome? And finally, Charlamagne, my dad told my brothers and me this: no matter how hard you work, how good you are, sooner or later, bad stuff is going to happen to you. How you deal with those bad things will tell your mother and me if we raised a man. I wrote a book about my father's life. It's called
And even to go back to the original point of how he came across conservatism, I feel like anybody that was raised through raised with a religious background would inevitably have a conservative outlook on the world, because the religion isn't intolerant. I mean, religion isn't tolerant of everything. I mean, there's a degree of intolerance actually that it takes to be associated with a certain religion, whether it's Christianity or the Nation of Islam. I mean, being tolerant for everything means that you stand for nothing.
Your father, dear son, 2 lives, 8 hours. It's about an 8-hour conversation he and I had, where at the beginning of the conversation, I thought my dad was harsh. He spanked us too often. We had a belt. In those days, from the South, you spank kids. And I thought my dad was way too harsh. And we had an 8-hour conversation. And by the time we ended, my dad got bigger and bigger and bigger, and Larry Elder got smaller and smaller and smaller. And I apologized to him. And it's a book that's changed a lot of people's lives. It's called, as I said, Your Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. The paperback is called A Lot Like Me. Same book, but it's cheaper.
Can you honestly say this is the Republican Party that you grew up on? This modern day GOP?
Yes. The Republican Party pretty much has always stood for low taxes, low regulation, peace through strength, not strength through peace, and strong borders, and still does. And when Donald Trump is gone, and he will be gone, even if he gets reelected, day after he gets reelected, he's a lame duck, the party will still go on. The principles will still go on. However, I do believe that many people in our party have spent and spent and spent, so that Ronald Reagan, my favorite president, when he entered the Oval Office, Charlamagne, when he left, government was bigger. It got bigger under George Herbert Walker Bush. It got bigger under W. It got bigger under Donald Trump. And the only way to restrain spending is with an amendment to the Constitution to fix spending to a certain percentage of the GDP.
All right, let's see what this dumb bro got to say. Let's skip ahead a little bit right here.
Be there.
Mr. Elder, I know a lot of Black conservatives, and I completely agree about the Black family. I don't think anybody here objects to that.
Don't disagree about that at all.
I think when you talk about ideology and then you mix in parties and then personalities, it gets kind of confusing. And, you mentioned yourself not to moan and groan, that as long as you work hard, all is well. And I think where the conflict is coming in is you did moan and groan about how the Republicans treated you. You did moan and groan about Governor Newsom and, asking for a recall. You did not leave that up to the voters. You are moaning and groaning when it comes to Donald Trump and how he's being treated. So it just seems to be a hypocrisy. And I don't know if the message would land a little bit better if there was some fairness across the board on Democrats and Republicans. I'm an independent, by the way, and I think both parties are trash. And I think all of us here, see both sides. And that's the part that's just not landing.
That's one point I actually can agree with this broad on, that both parties aren't necessarily the best, and we have to have our own party initially or essentially to be able to create real change. Although that I do believe that the Republicans are the worst of the two, the better of the two evil, because at least they're conservatives. At least they don't stand for mutilating children. At least they don't stand for this whole alphabet community rhetoric. But let us carry on.
For me, there seems to be an unfairness on both sides with you.
Well, not too surprisingly, I don't agree with your analysis. How is it that I did not leave the recall to the voters? What do you mean by that?
What do you?
You said I didn't leave the recall to the voters.
No. I said you moaned and groaned about it. You said it should be recalled, correct? Correct?
I said Gavin Newsom should have been recalled, yes.
Right, that's moaning and groaning.
Well, actually, it's taking advantage of what's in the California Constitution, which is when a certain percentage of voters sign a petition to recall a politician, there can be a recall vote, and there was one, as there was in 2003. We recalled the governor then, and there was in 2021 when I attempted to recall Gavin Newsom. That's part of our democratic process in California.
Absolutely. We agree with that. I'm going to your statement when you said rather than moan about it a little while ago. You said rather than moan about it, I'm just going to keep doing the hard work. And so I'm just saying that technically is moaning about it because the governor's the
so you see that her talking points are absolutely ridiculous. Like, you're gonna really take up time on this throughout this conversation to talk about him moaning and groaning about certain situations. Well, obviously he's just pointing out things about the certain situation that you just like. The attack is just personal at this point. She has nothing political to say. She has very minimal knowledge. She doesn't know anything to rebel against at this point. So she's just gonna accuse him of moaning and groaning for 5 to 10 minutes until somebody shuts her up and we move the conversation on. Why is she on the panel? What accolades does she have to be on this panel speaking to the Larry Elder? What is she doing on the screen? Like, why is she here? What benefit is she bringing to the conversation? Why is she here? Like, seriously.
So that's my point, sir.
I don't follow exactly what you're saying. I really don't.
It's okay. I didn't expect you to.
Yeah,
but
I'm a little slow sometimes.
Because all she's saying is that he's moaning and groaning. What's your point? Are you gonna have a real objective to try to persuade here? Or are you just gonna talk and take up time? Like, come on now. Like, please, someone shut her up. Charlamagne, please get her off the screen. Please. I can't bear it anymore. I can't.
One moment, yeah, we get it.
Yeah.
One moment you're complaining about the system, and the next minute you're saying the system is fair. The next minute you're saying it's not fair. So that's what I'm saying. There just seems to be a double standard on you and the system, not wanting to be accountable for a system that Black people are.
She obviously has low IQ because I explained this early in the video. He's not sitting here and saying that the system is fair. That's never been any of his talking points. He's sitting here and saying that the system is not run throughout racism. The system is not perfect, obviously, but it's not essentially corrupted throughout racism. There's corruption, but the corruption has a lot to do with more than just racism. It's not a systematic racial thing. He's trying to make that point, but she obviously is not getting that point across. He's not saying that the system is perfect. He's not saying that the system is this, that, or the third. He's just saying that their main prerogative is probably not to be systematic, is not systematic racism.
Not in charge of, by the way, of not wanting to hold both sides accountable when it comes to the system.
Do I believe Hillary was treated differently and Joe Biden treated differently than Donald Trump is being treated? Yes, I do. Is that an indictment about whether or not America is systemically racist? No, it is not. Those are two totally different things. Yes.
Like I just said, exactly. He's saying that there's adversity throughout the system, but the main adversity is not a racial one. And it's so hard for her to come across this conclusion because he's not saying that the system is perfect. Obviously, he's on your side when he says that different people get treated differently because of X, Y, and Z. It's just X, Y, and Z 9 times out of 10 isn't racism. Though maybe one time, maybe a couple of times it is, maybe a couple of times it's not. But that's not overall the main adversity that people face in the system. So not anymore, at least. I'm not gonna act like it wasn't a thing before, but not anymore, at least. Not in 2023. Yes, it may still be people in the system that are racist. That's never going to change, but that's not the inherent adversity. That's not the main adversity that people are going up against.
Not to merge the two, but they're two totally different.
Because I mean, look at Trump. I mean, you think they're doing this because Trump is white? I mean, like, come on, man.
Thanks. I agree with you. The two different things. No, we're agreeing. We're agreeing. The two different things. We're agreeing.
No, we're agreeing to two different things. We're not agreeing that there's not systematic racism because we're not in charge of the system, sir. In case you
okay, all right. Can we
now, assuming that voting is actually effective and that voting is actually real, we to an extent are in charge of the system because these are people that we voted to be in office. Although that we are a minority of the community, so our vote only holds so much weight. But 9 times out of 10, the Democratic Party has the Black vote year after year after year after year. So to complain about what the Democratic system has done for the Black society is null void to a certain extent, because we're the ones that put these people into office. If we want true change, like you said earlier, we might need to create our own party, of course, but we can start off by voting for better representatives and looking past the term racism when it comes voting time, because that's the thing that they use to monopolize Black people.
People have never been in charge of any system.
Well,
We're not
actually, we have been. Take Baltimore.
No, we've never been in charge of
may I
any
finish?
system. Tell me, what financial system are Black people in
Okay,
charge of? What healthcare system are Black people in charge of? What government system are
Now, is that maybe early on that was that has something to do with systematic racism, but in 2023, is it whose fault is it that we're not in charge of any educational or health systems or this, that, and the third? I mean, we have 1 million billionaires, right? Okay, that obviously I'm using hyperbole there, but we have a certain number of billionaires, multimillionaires in our community. Where is that money going? Is that money going towards a financial system for the Black community? Is that money going towards the banking system for the community? Is that money going towards anything that would help give us one of the 5 things that a community would need to thrive? I mean, whose fault is it really?
Black people in charge
I'm about ready to tell you.
Prison system are Black people in charge.
I'm about ready to tell you.
I'm not talking about mayors.
Okay, when you and all these, let me play this back.
Are Black people in charge of? What healthcare system are Black people in charge of?
What healthcare system have Black people invested in?
What government system are Black people in charge of?
What government system has Black people invested in? I mean,
I'm about ready to tell you.
And I don't mean minimally. I mean to a level to where we could actually conquer.
System of Black people.
What prison system are Black people investing in? We have all these multimillionaires that are running the culture of society that Black people are looking up to and trying to keep up with the Joneses. But what have they really invested in to give back to the Black community? Obviously, some people have. I'm not going to sit here and act like certain individuals have not invested into the Black community, but not to the extent where we'd have our own banking system, where we'd have our own financial system, where we'd have our own healthcare system. No, that's not in the Black prerogative. It's not. So we can't sit here and complain as if this is something that we've been pursuing ever since we've accumulated a certain number of multimillionaires and billionaires.
To tell you,
I'm not talking about mayors. I already know that talking points, sir. I go on Fox News all the time as well. So let's not go there with that. I said, what system have we created? Goodness. Have we implemented that we have been in charge of? Name one.
Is this why you don't like?
See, and this is what she doesn't understand. There's no system that we've created, and it's not that because we could not create it. It's because that we choose not to create it. We choose to spend this money on other things. We're a multi-trillion-dollar community, but we don't spend. Maybe I use hyperbole there, but we don't spend that money towards the things that she's speaking of. Is that the white man's fault that we don't spend the money towards these things? Or is that our fault? Is that a moment where we have to self-reflect on ourselves? Is that something that they did or something that is completely under our control in 2023? Let us carry on.
Like talking to Black women, Larry Elder?
Wow. Baltimore. Freddie Gray a few years ago.
No. That's mayors. I'm not talking. I said system.
I'm going to tell you about this system if you allow me to finish my point.
I'm not talking about somebody elected.
And she just keeps cutting him off. Like, Jesus, I would have turned the screen off so fast. Like, you stupid broad, shut up and listen for us.
And doing a job, sir. I asked, what system did we create? What financial?
Okay, let's talk about the system of one of the largest. Thank you.
Sir.
One of the systems of one of the largest cities in America, Baltimore. Freddie Gray died in police custody a few years ago. The mayor was Black. The head of the police department was Black. Number 2,
it's not in charge of the system, but go ahead.
Number 2 person in charge of the police department was Black. All the city council, Democrats, majority Black.
Still not in charge of the system.
Wow.
Like, this is just excruciating to listen to. Can the man get one sentence out with this sassy ass broad just intervening? Like, Jesus Christ, I would have turned the TV off so fucking fast. She's almost unbearable to just listen to. Jesus Christ, like, show the man the same level of respect that he's giving you when you speak. I just don't understand why, like, and she's supposed to be advocating for Black people. She's the female representative of Black people when it comes to this particular episode or this particular podcast. Come on, man.
6 officers charged, 3 of them were Black. A judge before whom...
And then the fucking producer keeps flipping the screen to her as if it's her turn to speak. Like, nigga.
2 of the officers tried their case, found him not guilty, was Black.
Still not in charge of the system.
The city.
I should really sit here and count how many times that she's going to cut him off before he gets to his point.
Intendant of public schools was black. The county superintendent of public schools is black. The attorney general at the time, Loretta Lynch, is black, as was the president of the United States was black. And yet
still not in charge of the system. So I asked you a simple question, sir.
Well, Wanda Sykes said when Barack Obama got elected, how are you going to complain about the man when you are the man? Now, from the president to the attorney general to the state attorney to the mayor to the head of the police department to the commissions of the schools in the city and in the county to the majority of city council in that city, all of them are black. And you're still saying that we don't run anything?
So who's in charge of the
system?
No.
I said who created the system. I didn't say we didn't run anything. I challenged a lot of those.
Bro, she just 1,000 times said they're not in charge. He's not in charge. He's not. Wouldn't in charge indicate that you run something? Like, Jesus Christ, somebody get her off the fucking panel. Please, 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 please. Charlamagne, just push the button. Pull a fresh and fit right now. Please, please, please. This is unbearable. And look at my brother right here with this camera been standing up for about 41 minutes, 50 seconds. God damn, I know his back is hurting, but he getting that cheese. Go ahead, brother. I ain't mad at you.
Those black leaders, by the way. I said when we talk about the system, what black people have been in charge of any system. I'm not talking about a position. I'm not talking about a mayor. You know good and well
you're basically saying
she's okay. She said I'm not talking about a position. Wouldn't being in charge put you in a particular position? Isn't that what being in charge would indicate, that you have a particular position within the system? Like am I tripping? Like, I'm about to just I feel my IQ just dropping by the second as I listen to this woman speak. I don't think I can do this anymore. I don't think I could do this anymore. Let me know in the chat, man. Should I keep going or should I just save myself the trouble? Jesus.
And that they're black faces that are still in those positions, but they're still being a part
Similar
of the
to you, Mr. Elder. You're a black face in a position in the conservative movement. They're just the same. They're just on the other side. I'm talking about. So
then when Martin Luther King said in 1966, I believe there could be a black president in about 40 years' time, then it really doesn't matter if there's one or isn't. Nothing changes. He was naive.
The system also killed him as well. Well, we know that the FBI and the CIA also killed him. That system. You realize that, correct?
Wow.
What the fuck is this broad talking about? What is this broad talking about? Like, what is her point? What is the answer that she's looking for?
An individual killed him.
Right. That was also a part of Pro Hotel through the system. Correct?
Not correct.
Pro.
Not correct. He was
killed.
The
FBI didn't have anything to do with it. The CIA didn't have anything to do with it.
Edgar Hoover was definitely on Martin's ass. Like, come on.
I didn't say he wasn't. Robert Kennedy is the one that approved the wiretaps. But to say that the FBI killed him, I mean, what's your evidence of that?
Oh no,
that's a pretty serious charge.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Pretty serious charge.
Yeah.
Serious charge that requires serious evidence.
Yeah.
What is your enforcement law proposal?
It is to allow states to set up commissions of retired judges and retired DAs to get rid of these soft on crime, George Soros-backed DAs that are allowing a bunch of bad people on the streets or not charging bad people to the full extent of the law. And the people that, by and large, that are hurt by these people are the very black and brown people living in the inner city. There's a Larry Krasner is a George Soros-backed DA in Philadelphia. He's been impeached, but this Philadelphia State Senate wouldn't even take up the case. We've had 2 attempts to repeal a soft on crime DA in LA County, and it hasn't gone through yet. We've got a bunch of, in my opinion, this guy, Alvin Bragg, he ran promising to get Donald Trump. And when he got in, he said the evidence wasn't there. And then one of the former DAs writes a book, accuses Bragg of giving Donald Trump a pass. And all of a sudden, he brings counts against Donald Trump. I think it's unfair.
You think members of your party are leaning toward fascism?
Define fascism.
Authoritarianism.
Define fascism.
I mean, the rejection of democracy, the rule of law, and equal rights under the law in favor of a strong man, Donald Trump, who interprets the popular will.
No, I don't. There was a long article about Barack Obama by one of my mentors. His name is Thomas Sowell. He's an economist, he's a black conservative, still alive, around 95 years old. And he wrote a piece in which he said a lot of people call people like Barack Obama socialist. Socialism is government ownership of the means of production. Fascism is when The government allows you to own means of production. The government tells you what to do. And he said, frankly, technically, people like Barack Obama are fascists. That is to say, these are left-wing people telling you how to run your business, telling you what to sell, telling you what you can't sell. For example, in California, we have a governor named Gavin Newsom who recently said by the year 2035, no more sale of new gas-powered cars. How dare you? Most people don't want an EV. They like their own gasoline-powered cars, but now you're telling car dealerships they can't even sell them? What do you call that?
But what about, when you tell women what to do with their bodies?
Well, that is a moral issue. I happen to be pro-life, and I believe that that abortion is a sin. That's not telling women what to do with their body. That's expressing my opinion about whether or not it is right or it is wrong. For example, there is a guy right now behind bars in Philadelphia named Dr. Kermit Gosnell. Mm-hmm. He is an abortion doctor who performed late-term abortions. When I ask people who consider my position to be extreme, I ask them, tell me at what point do you believe pregnancy has gone so far that to terminate the unborn would be homicide, and almost nobody will give you an answer. So in other words, what you're really telling me then is this guy, Dr. Kermit Gosnell, should be set free. He's a political prisoner. He was persecuted unfairly. If you won't tell me when you think at what point a pregnancy cannot be terminated unless it's homicide, then to me you're essentially allowing women to kill the unborn, no matter how old that unborn is. And I think that's wrong. The other thing, Charlamagne, real quickly on this issue.
And it's funny because if you look at the statistics, the most unsafe place for a Black child to be is within the womb of their own mother. Let us carry on.
It'd be one thing if the pro-life community was not talking the talk and walking the walk. But there are literally thousands.
Don't get me wrong. I ain't here to say abortion is right or wrong. I mean, me personally, I'm pro-life, but I can also understand the certain situations, the very minuscule certain situations where I'm not going to say it might be okay, but I would understand why someone would do that.
Pregnancy centers all over America, whether it's funding for adoption services, funding for housing, funding for education, funding for job training, to let women know they have alternatives. And every state will decide this. The government shouldn't be passing some sort of law one way or the other regarding abortion. Every state's going to decide that. I'm in California, which is a deep blue state. There have been 2 initiatives to restrict abortion. I voted in favor of them. I was overwhelmingly defeated. And when abortion has been put on the ballot in recent years, the people that wanted abortion restrictions have lost. Mm-hmm. The American people pretty much have said, first-term abortions, they want them to be legal. Late-term abortions, they don't want them to be legal. I happen to disagree with that, but I'm willing to live in a society that has a different point of view than I have on this issue.
Can you have a real democracy if you're taking away people's power of choice? If you're taking away people's power to choose and not giving them any options.
Well, if you consider it to be a crime, that abortion is a sin, in my opinion, you're not taking people's right to choose. You're making a moral statement about what's right and what's wrong.
There's a lot of sins, though. Sex before marriage is a sin. I'm sure you did some of that.
As for the sins of my past, either the Lord has forgiven me or the statute of limitations.
I give Charlamagne that point. He is actually, that was a funny point. But I mean, regardless, I don't think there can necessarily be a system, regardless of if it's a democracy or a dictatorship or any type of system where, to an extent, you don't take away people's right to choose, because people's choice can be violence, right? But you take away their ability to do that. You not even necessarily take away the ability to do that, but there's repercussions for making that choice. So there's not necessarily any system that you can implement where people's right of choice isn't removed to a certain degree. And obviously there might be different degrees, but nonetheless, no system is capable of just allowing or being tolerant of absolutely everything.
Has run out. I'm making a joke about that. A lot of people, of course, make mistakes. Yeah. Yes. Okay. And I think that people should deal with the consequences of their actions. And if you let people know there are consequences to their actions, it will inform their actions and make them behave more responsibly. Anytime you allow bad behavior to continue, you're going to get more bad behavior, whether that's...
So how does that apply to President Trump then? Because you said that was a 2-tier system that
because
that's unfair.
I don't believe Donald Trump...
You don't think he did anything?
I don't think he did anything wrong. No, I don't. I believe that he complained about the election the same way Hillary did. Hillary, for 4 years, referred to the 2016 election as having been stolen, her word, not mine. She called Donald Trump illegitimate, her word, not mine. Jay Johnson, who's Obama's DHS secretary, testified under oath that not a single vote tally was changed by the Russians. They tried, but they failed to change a single vote tally. 66% of Democrats believe the Russians changed vote tallies to get Donald Trump elected. Even though Jay Johnson testified under oath, not a single one was changed. That's the damage that people like Hillary and former President Jimmy Carter, and Stacey Abrams and Hakeem Jeffries and others have said for years, referring to Donald Trump as illegitimate. A greater percentage of Democrats believe 2016 was stolen than we feel that way about 2020, but yet nobody calls them election deniers and nobody accuses them of undermining our republic. And they're not undermining our republic. They're complaining about an election. You have a right to do so.
And this is what he means by a two-tier system, because like you see both Hillary and Donald Trump in the same situation. They're not in these situation, or Trump's not in his situation within comparison to Hillary's situation due to racial discrimination or even gender discrimination or whatever you want to call it. He's in that situation because the left has a certain prerogative or have certain ideologies that they want to push, and Trump is not aligning with those ideologies. So he's in the situation that he's in. Hillary was more inclined to align with those ideologies. And so she's living, of course, free, though she should probably be in the same situation as Trump if that's how they were going to do things, because they both essentially did the same thing when it came to the votes.
I know you probably got to go. Have you ever heard of the term nigga wake up call?
No.
It is an incident where a person of color forgets that they are of color and are reminded rather brutally by an unexpected act of racism. Have you ever had any of those?
Oh, brother.
I'm just asking. You think you've ever
Well,
had
I'm acutely aware, Charlamagne, that I'm a black person, just as you are a black person. And when Joe Biden insulted you by saying, you ain't really black, we don't know whether or not you want to vote for me or vote for Donald Trump, it seems to me that should have been a wake.
See, I always thought that was a fucking meme. I can't believe he actually said that. I mean, for a president to tell you that you're not who or what you are because you don't think a certain way is absolutely ridiculous. And any black person should have taken offense to that. I don't know how the black community supported the Democratic Party in this and got this guy into office, but we all know that there's a psychological connection to the word racism that black people have. Whenever they hear it, they'll jump and do whatever the fuck anybody that claims that they're opposing it says. Let us carry on.
A call on your part. How dare this guy come in here and insult you, a black man, and tell you got to think a certain kind of way? I'm amazed that you weren't mad about that.
I'm not gonna say it upset me, just like I'm not letting you upset me. You know what I mean? I don't tend to get upset over things like that. But what I did say,
well, you just not talk about a nigger wake up call, and it seemed to me that should have been a wake up call on your part to have a white guy come in here who also said, by the way, about Mitt Romney, because he didn't want to put more regulations on Wall Street, going to put y'all back in chains. And Joe Biden has lied for decades about his civil rights record, claiming that he desegregated movie theaters and restaurants in Wilmington, Delaware, when he didn't do any of that. He lied and said that he tried to visit Nelson Mandela during apartheid South Africa. He did not. And he came in here and told you aren't even black unless you think a certain kind of way. It seems to me that should have been a nigga wake-up call for you. But
that should have been a nigga wake-up call for you, Charlamagne, but I guess you didn't hear it.
Wasn't apparently.
Yeah, I mean, no, for the record, I'm not a Democrat or Republican.
I didn't say you were.
I think both.
I don't know what you are. I never even asked you about your party affiliation. Yeah, I'm just saying but you are black. And to have a white guy come in here and tell you have to say think a certain kind of way.
One thing I can respect about the Breakfast Club is they do have a different variety of people come on here, and to have someone like Larry Elder come on here that's probably going to disagree with 90% of their liberal and democratic ideologies is actually very brave of the Breakfast Club, knowing that they about to get destroyed by true intellect. I mean, applaud to them, man. At least they have the moral, at least they have the high ground to have these conversations. You know what I'm saying? Because silence on either side is just not going to lead to anything. It's going to lead to tyranny, essentially. So I can appreciate that they can have these conversations.
Why you quote ain't black? Wow.
How should I have replied to him, you think?
What I just now said, how dare you insult me and tell me I think as a human being, let alone as a black person? I don't tell you how to think, Joe Biden. How dare you come in here and tell me how I should think? I'm going to vote for Donald Trump if I want to vote for Donald Trump. And if I want to vote for Donald Trump, it does not make me not black. 20% of black people, black men, as I said, voted for Donald Trump in 2020. Are they not black now? So only 80% of black men walking around are really black, 20% are not because they voted for Donald Trump. How insulting is that? How condescending is that?
I mean, you're probably right, but I didn't take it in that way.
Well, I did.
As I said to him in that moment, it's just about me wanting something for my people. And I want to know, what is he going to do for my people? And not only for my people now, how are you going to atone for the things you've done to my people?
Right.
That's it.
Right. And this is a guy, Joe Biden, who, when he first got into the Senate, hung out with segregationists, talked about how well he got along with them, talked about how he didn't want integration because of a jungle. This guy has made all sorts of insulting things to black people, and his policies right now are hurting black people. Inflation hurts the people at the bottom more than anything else. Letting a bunch of illegal aliens into the border are hurting black people more than anybody else, as I said earlier. He's opposed to school choice when he has his own kids in private school. And we lost a year, almost 2 years of in-school education in California because of COVID that he supported. I mean, this guy has done monstrous things to black people, and then for him to come in here and tell you how you ought to think as a black person, it blew my mind.
As a person objectively who doesn't care about either party, when I just take a step back and I just look at everything that's happening, I see one party that seems still committed to democracy somewhat, and one party who's headed fast towards fascism. That's just my personal opinion. So who do you think I would vote for?
Well, let's talk about fascism, since I assume you're talking about election denying. In 2000, when George W. Bush won the election over Al Gore, the Democrats, the first week of January 2001, tried to overturn the results in Florida. 2004, George W. Bush gets reelected. Democrats, including Benny Thompson, the chair of the January 6th committee, Jamie Raskin, a member of the January 6th committee, joined with 28 other House Democrats and Senator Barbara Boxer to overturn the results in Ohio, claiming without any evidence the Debo voting machine had been hacked. 2016, January 2017, Democrats challenged more states trying to get the election overturned that elected Donald Trump. Then Donald Trump challenged first week of January in 2021. Nobody accused them of undermining our republic. Nobody accused them of being fascists. They exercised whatever means they could to try to win the election. I want to remind you that Hillary Clinton advised Joe Biden during the 2020 election, if it is a close election, quote, do not concede under any circumstances, close quote. Donald Trump used whatever legal means he could, advancing some novel legal theories to try to stay in office, and he failed. But I don't blame him for trying.
Yeah, but it's not just election denying. It's the disdain of women and fear of non-standard gender identities and sexual orientation.
Disdain
it's
for
the
women.
Galvanizing of popular rage against cultural elites. It's nationalism based on dominant, superior race and historic bloodlines. Like, there's a lot of things that Republicans are doing.
Well, what about Joe Biden going to Howard University, as he did recently, giving a commencement speech, Charlamagne, and he said the number one threat to the homeland was white supremacy. Really? The
FBI said that.
The Anti-Defamation League keeps track of how many people are killed by extremists, no matter the race of the extremists, every year. Last year, there were 25. As I said, in 2020, there were 11,000 blacks who were murdered, almost all murdered by other people, not murdered by white extremists. It's a lie to say white extremists is a big problem in America. It's a lie. It's what Democrats do to get black people angry.
The FBI said that.
It's interesting. I actually didn't know that, but that makes sense. It's what Democrats do to get people angry. Like I told you, we have a psychological connection to the word racism that we need to detach from, because whenever we hear it, we're willing to vote for whoever the fuck is opposing the quote unquote racism.
It's what Democrats.
Yeah, he's completely right. This is the Democrats' number one rule. Every time election year comes around, you see stuff like BLM and your news feed is flooded with police brutality and this, that, and the third, that subconsciously makes people think, okay, he's against racism, so let me vote for him. The other guy is focused on bigger issues, and you're completely oblivious to that. But let me vote for the guy that said the word racism, that said that black people this, black people that, minority this, minority that. And we need to detach this psychological connection that we have with the word, because it hasn't benefited us in any of the last 4 or 5 elections, has it?
I don't agree with that.
And every time these Democrats get into office, they never follow through with their word. They never push any of the agendas that they were throwing into your face. Once they get into office, it's blank promises, and for some reason we keep going for it.
The number one threat to the homeland is a large number of people who are engaging in criminal activity. And what Democrats do is tell black people racism, racism, racism. They trot out David Duke or some other facsimile every 4 years to tell black people, vote for us, because after all, we're the party of racial justice, social justice, and equity. And these dastardly people over there, these Republicans, are the party of Jim Crow and slavery, even though it was the Democratic Party that was the party of Jim Crow and slavery.
So why should black people rock with the GOP then? Like, what are the reasons?
Economics. I had Tavis Smiley and Cornel West on my radio show once, Charlamagne. And I told Tavis and Cornel West that under Ronald Reagan, black adult unemployment fell faster than white adult unemployment. Mm-hmm. Black Hispanic unemployment fell faster than did white unemployment. Black teenage unemployment fell faster than did white teenage unemployment. Black businesses were created at a rate faster. Their revenues grew at a rate faster. And they both told me that I was wrong. and that they would have the data on my desk by Monday. That was 15 years ago. I know the mail is slow, but it seems to me they should have given it to me by now.
15 years
Again,
is
Donald Trump
crazy.
presided over the best economy ever for Black people, lowest unemployment. And it seems to me the number one reason that most people vote is because of the economy. We have had 40-year historic high in inflation. We've had gas prices that are now by 40% more than what they were when Joe Biden came into office. And we have about 7 million illegal aliens in our country. And the bulk of the suffering because of these illegal aliens will be borne by Black people living in the inner city. Those are three reasons alone not to vote for the Democratic Party and to vote for the Republican Party. And by the way, I'm not voting for a fishing buddy. It's not because I like Trump or like him personally. I'm voting for policies. And I don't really care whether or not his personality offends people and he does bad tweets. Maybe it might be better for our society if he were more polite. I don't know. I don't care. I'm not voting for a fishing buddy. I'm voting for somebody to keep taxes low, keep regulations low, to secure the borders and keep us out of unnecessary wars.
Would it be fun to have money in a fascist country, though? To be Black and have money in a fascist country? Or to be anything other than a white
I don't agree this is a fascist country. It's always better to have money than not to have money. 15% all of a sudden support this man. It wasn't because they wanted capital gains taxes raised, which Obama promised to do. It wasn't because of Obamacare, which Obama promised to do. It's because many Americans said at the very least, he'll stop the nonsense that America remains systemically racist. And for 8 years, in my humble opinion, he played race card after race card after race card. So when he entered the Oval Office, both Blacks and whites thought race relations would get better. When he left, both Blacks and whites thought they got worse. Why? Because he did things like the Cambridge police acted stupidly when they didn't. If I had a son, he looked like Trayvon. When what happened to Trayvon had nothing to do with his race. He embraced Black Lives Matter.
I don't know about that one, Larry. All due respect, I don't know about that one, Larry. I don't know about that one. Let us carry on.
He invited Al Sharpton in the White House over 70 times. He said that racism is in America's DNA. He said all sorts of things so that when he left, both Blacks and whites thought race relations got worse.
Right, but sir, this is where and we can just agree to disagree because you're mixing race relations and voters, what voters decided to do, who might just be very good people that decided to elect a Black man, confusing with institutional system racism. And those are just two totally different things. And it's okay if we just agree to disagree. I'm talking about structures, not what voters did or, voters wanted to see better race relations. We're talking about structures, the same structures that you referenced several times that have also spited you. So that's all
Joe Biden, for example, when Georgia reformed its law, said it was worse than Jim Crow. It's Jim Ego. More Blacks voted in Georgia than ever before. The percentage of Blacks increased. If the structure, how is it that the structure did not stop Black people from voting in Georgia?
Well, I'm not talking about voting, sir. I'm talking about, and just to be fair, I think Joe Biden and what Joe Biden has did to African Americans, particularly with the war on drugs, was one of the worst things that actually happened to Black people. Just to put that on the record, he too was a part of that system that I'm talking about. Democrats as well. I just try to stay balanced to say that same system applies on both sides. Democrats and Republicans helped with mass incarceration. Joe Biden wrote it. So we have no problem. I have no problem condemning him as a Democrat for what he's done. I'm just talking about institutions versus relations are just two totally different things. And that's just where we, just disagree with that. And that's okay.
Well, we didn't really get into mass incarceration, but most people who are behind bars because they committed a violent crime against somebody else. And often the Black people who are behind bars committed a violent crime against another Black person.
Well, when I'm talking about mass incarceration, I'm not talking about violent crimes. I'm talking about non-violent crimes, particularly the war on drugs. I was very clear in what I said.
I agree with you that I believe that the drug problem should be dealt with as a health problem rather than a criminal justice problem. But most people are not behind bars for using drugs or for dealing drugs. They're behind bars for having committed a violent act against another person.
Sure, but that wasn't what I was talking about. I was very clear when I talked about Joe Biden writing the crime bill and mass incarceration with war on drugs to nonviolent offenders. So that's a different conversation. You're weaving the two together. So we just have a disagreement on institutions versus race relations, and that's okay.
Well, in order for you to go to jail, you have to commit a crime. If you walk down the street,
not always when you're Black in America.
Well, where are the class action lawsuits, Charlamagne? We have all these Black lawyers, many Black people have gone to law school. Where are the class action lawsuits?
I'll agree with Charlamagne on this point, but that happens very little. Like the people that go to jail that are innocent are not the majority. That's not what 90% of the people are in jail and they're innocent. That's not necessarily how it works. I believe that most of the people that are incarcerated were at some point committing a crime or actually guilty of something, because then they would have never found themselves in that situation. Although there is a plethora of people that are innocent, black, white, Asian, whatever it may be, that are actually innocent, maybe because they just fit a description, or wrong time, wrong place, wrong time type of ordeal. And in those situations, of course, yes, but those are very minuscule. So when you're speaking over on the overall system, you have to focus on the majority of cases. And the majority of cases are violent cases that black people played their fair share in getting themselves incarcerated. Not saying that for whatever the punishment may be is adequate to the crime, but nonetheless, the incarceration was due to their own free will. I mean, you have to commit a crime to end up. You don't have to commit a crime, but most of the time, you have to commit a crime to end up incarcerated.
Claiming that a bunch of people are behind bars illegally, wrongfully. Where are they?
So you think everybody that's behind bars?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Why don't you answer my question?
He's trying to take it to the next extreme, talking about everybody. I mean, obviously not everybody behind bars committed a crime, but there's a minority of people that are innocent, but the majority of people are there for a reason.
Class action lawsuits.
Oh, you need money to do class
action
lawsuits.
I agree with Charlamagne on that point. You definitely need money for the class action lawsuits. So let's not act like it's just something that should have just been, done easily.
Black Attorney General Eric Holder. You had back-to-back Black Attorneys General Eric Holder and then Loretta Lynch. Why didn't they release a whole bunch of people who are illegally behind bars? Why didn't they do that? You had a black president.
And I criticized them as well. Went on record, because actually you're right. He lied and said that he was going to fix the crack cocaine disparity. So I went on record. You're right. And guess what? Guess who he works for? The system. So he's just a blackface that works for the system at the time. So again, we just disagree on systems and institutions versus black faces in high places.
Well, the disparity has been rectified. Now you go to jail for dealing powder as you do for dealing crack. And at one time there was a disparity.
No, you go to jail, but the ratio is not the same.
Well, because the dealers are not the same. For example, there are more white people behind bars for drunk driving than there are black people. There are certain categories of crime that whites commit.
Mr. Elder,
Depends on the drug. More whites are behind bars for meth than blacks are.
You're just going all over the place, sir. We were talking about, it's very clear.
You said drugs. Depends on the category of drug. Depends on the category of drugs. More whites are involved in meth than blacks.
I gave you the category that I wanted to talk about, and you start talking about drinking. You're just all over the place.
Okay, he obviously recorrected himself, realigned himself. Now continue with the conversation to shut the fuck up.
But it's okay.
More blacks are involved in crack cocaine. More whites are involved in powder. More whites are involved in meth than blacks. Depends on the category of the drug you're talking about.
And I was talking about a very clear category, and I gave you. I told you where I just criticized the black man who was in charge, and you skipped over that and went right to talking about drunk driving. So again, sir, I have no problem with criticizing black Democrats. We do that. Charlamagne does that all the time. It's just the imbalance of understanding that even black faces in high places, even including yours and Democrats, Republicans, just being fair across the board. That's all.
Well, that to me basically is no different than what Joe Biden just did with Charlamagne, which is to tell me as a black person I got to think a certain kind of way, otherwise I'm not black.
And I didn't like that either.
Well, you just did.
I didn't like that either.
You just did. You call me a black face as if I'm supposed to think a certain kind of way.
No, I said blackface. I said blackface in high places. I said they're everywhere. You're a black face. You're in a high place. You're running for president of the United States. That's a high place. You are a black face, correct? I said so. There's blackface in high places on both sides. So it's just about being fair for me on both sides. I've mentioned
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, I mentioned several Democrats that I have a problem with. Several, including Joe Biden. So you don't have to sell us on that. We get that. I'm just saying it also happens on the Republican side. That's all. And black conservatives agree with a lot.
He already acknowledged that when he made a list of the things he had a problem with under the Republican side. I don't know what point she's trying to get across. She's just talking.
Your message, Mr. Elder, but when you're not balanced across the board, it just kind of lands flat. That's all.
Whose cocaine do you think it was in the White House as we talking about drugs?
I have no idea. All I know is that it seems to me it's
Hunter Biden.
To be scary that that Secret Service has closed the investigation without identifying a suspect. What other kind of stuff goes in and out of the White House without anybody knowing about it? But I have no idea. I just think it's bizarre that the investigation all of a sudden got closed that fast.
And you think criminal charges should be brought against President Biden, right?
I think there certainly should be an investigation about the pay-for-play stuff that we're hearing. The IRS whistleblowers are saying that they were told to stand down in their investigation. I think there's a double standard going on, as I said earlier. For example, Donald Trump has been indicted for document possession. There is a special counsel investigating Joe Biden for document possession, but his defenders are saying, well, Joe Biden, unlike Donald Trump, turned over the documents readily when they were found out to have them. And if that's the case, why is the investigation still taking so long?
Tell them how they can support your campaign.
LarryElder.com. I need $1 from 40,000 individuals, even if you want somebody else to talk about some of the issues that Charlamagne and I.
All right, man. I think that's enough for today's video. I think we just ran through the whole video. I didn't know Larry Elder is actually running for president. That'd be very interesting to see him in office, and if he could actually make any of his agendas come to life, or any of the things that he's trying to bring to light actually come to light. Because I don't know. I hear there's a lot of rumors about when people get into office, they realize that all the things that they wanted to do, that's not going to happen. And this is the script that you're going to play. So I'm very curious to see if that plays out. I'm very curious to see what happens with Trump. This dumb broad frustrated me majority of the video, but we made it through, so it's all right. And Charlamagne is obviously very minimal, has a very minimal IQ, and he's not specifically certified to have certain conversations, but he's obviously a bright individual. If he's been able to take his platform onto this level, DJ Envy, he knew his place, didn't say too much. Okay, shout out Larry Elder, my bad. And we out. It's your boy, King Katumwa.